I previously mentioned the Valkyr rework and I wanted to talk about it. So, here we are. DE went ahead and changed how Valkyr plays. Now, from memory, previously I never really had an issue with Valkyr. I always thought she was pretty solid. However, it seemed like a lot of players didn't like some parts of her kit, and as far as I know, DE has essentially changed her as per a lot of those demands. What we have now is a Warframe that, at the end of the day, with the same build more or less that I was using before, still pretty much feels the same as how she was playing before, but with some extra things, and I actually quite like these extra things. So for now, I think I'm going to hold the Valkyr rework in some high regard. So let's have a look at what her kit does now, so that everyone can be absolutely sure what's going on. But first, don't forget to subscribe. Especially if you're a Genshin nerd. Obviously I do a lot more Genshin videos than Warframe videos these days, but still, don't forget to subscribe. Tenno Live is happening this weekend, so if you ring that bell icon, you can be notified of when, if I, hopefully, do the live stream watch party for the big announcements that are going to be coming from the big keynote presentation. I think the main suspicion that we're all having may be that Tau is in sight, and so we'll just have to see what happens. Oh, and also, at the same time, the Friday night before will also be, I think, the Genshin 5.8 announcement live stream. So we're just going to be doing quite a few live stream watch parties this week. To summarize what Valkyr's kit does, well, let's just go through it. First off, we have a new passive in the form of a rage meter. Essentially, the idea is if you keep killing enemies with melee weapons and, of course, her claws, that will build up that rage meter. On top of that, it seems like you can get quite a lot of rage meter from Parazon and finisher kills, so you could keep an eye out for that as well. Now, the rage meter mainly is used so that your melee damage is increased by quite a lot, but on top of that, if you do end up dying, well, you can actually just expend your rage meter, provided you have more than half of it, and you don't die. So there's that. Now, her first ability being Rip Line is still more or less the same Rip Line that we're all used to, with the exception that we now have kind of the same mechanics as Oraxia, sort of thwip mechanics, if you will. Essentially, the idea is that you can stay on the Rip Line for the entire length of the Rip Line, as opposed to only a few seconds before you hop off. You can still hop off prematurely if you want by literally hopping, i.e. jumping off. But the big thing now is that if you use Rip Line on enemies, you will pull yourself to the enemy, but then on top of that, you'll actually pull nearby enemies to that target, which is exactly what we wanted for Mag's pull prior to the Mag rework from way back when. So that is now a thing with Rip Line that does actually make Rip Line a lot more interesting to use. Second ability, of course, being Warcry, still pretty much the same Warcry as we're used to with the melee speed increase. And then on top of that, there is an armor boost that is actually 3x when you use it in Hysteria, or rather when Hysteria is active, so keep an eye on that. Now, the next ability, being a third ability, is of course Paralysis. And I don't know if you can hear this in the background, but someone is drilling a hole in their wall! This ability uses energy instead of shields now, which is actually, I suppose, something that a lot of people wanted because I guess people didn't like the shield drain. I don't know. This one seems a bit odd to me. I was actually a bit of a fan of the shield drain for Paralysis, but no matter. Basically now, it still opens up enemies to finishers, but then on top of that, it now inflicts a melee damage vulnerability. Now, for those of us who have played Oraxia, you may already be familiar with how damage vulnerability works. Basically, it's just another multiplier on top of, I believe, all of the, well, in this case, melee damage that you are doing. And then finally, there is Hysteria, which I think received probably the most changes, in the sense that, number one, it's no longer invulnerable when you are in Hysteria. This was something that I think a lot of people didn't like because it kind of made some of the bits and pieces of Valkyr's kit rather redundant, in particular the massive amounts of armor that you can get with Valkyr, and so as a direct result of that, D has taken out the invulnerability. Now, you can also therefore use something like Rage or Hunter Adrenaline while Hysteria is active in order to get some energy for the ability while it is draining. They've also capped how much the ability will drain energy-wise over time, as opposed to before. Like before, the maximum amount of energy drain was 15, now it's only 5, so it should still be a little bit more efficient than it used to be now. And then on top of that, like I mentioned, the armor increase that you get from Warcry is 3x during the duration of Hysteria. And then finally, her claws during Hysteria have actually received some combo counter changes. I believe specifically to do with the amount of damage that the combos can do, but I haven't really taken that much time to assess the differences in that. The way that I play Valkyr now, it's actually by using her 1 and her 3 a lot more often than I used to, because her 1, being able to group enemies, is incredibly satisfying, and her 3 is, well, it's got a different animation now, and I believe it is one-handed? Either way though, her 1 being not just paralysis, i.e. not just finisher memes, but now also melee damage vulnerability, does make it a lot more, I suppose, useful than before. This is the build that I've been using. I am an enraged player, so I've been keeping her claws for either emergency situations or on harder enemies like acolytes, who of course get one-shotted, and bosses at some point. Now, Eternal War is, I think, a staple in almost, if not all, Valkyr builds. It is just wildly useful. And because of how negative my energy efficiency is, with Swing Line being an excellent augment, this actually becomes very, very useful. All I have to do is just jump up in the air, and suddenly her 1 is actually for free. And it makes it great for both movement and, of course, for grouping enemies. Otherwise, she is also a rage tank. To me, hence Hunter Adrenaline. The rest of this build should be pretty straightforward and self-explanatory. Now, I also have 3 red Archon shards and 1 yellow Archon shard, hyper-focusing on melee crit damage, and as well as getting some more energy at the start of the mission, i.e. using Scuff Preparation, so that I can use Warcry immediately without hesitation. Without that, I would need to either get hit a few times or at least grab 1 energy orb before I can actually use Warcry at all. And without Warcry, well, I'm not putting any attack speed mods on my melee weapons, specifically because Warcry exists, thus making those melee weapons feel like crap to use right up until I activate Warcry, so I'd rather have that ability ready to go. So the general Valkyr experience to me has been 1 part melee gameplay with whatever melee weapon I like. Some of my choices include the Gatekeeper's Truth, Grand Prime, the Gatekeeper's Curse, Galatine Prime, God Hand Crusher, Frag or Prime, or of course even a Showstopper, although I haven't got any footage of those weapons, I believe. 1 part, of course, is also keeping an eye on my health, and then another 2 parts of just going absolutely crazy with Hysteria for at least a few seconds, or a few more seconds, or all of the duration, because CBF just trying to keep that in line. I can't say for sure, though, if she's gotten stronger or weaker as a direct result of this rework, but at the very, very least, I will say this. Her Riptide is now something that I'm not that willing to Helminth away anymore. I'm not entirely sure if there's any of these abilities that are worth Helminthing away. Even Paralysis actually has a reason to stick around. So one thing as well I just wanted to say real quick is that I am finding the Helminth progressively less useful, at least when it comes to the ability swapping mechanic of the Helminth. Let me know how you feel about that. This used to be like a pretty useful thing back in the day, because we did have quite a lot of Warframes that had 1 distinct ability that wasn't terribly useful. Nowadays, I'm finding it harder and harder to justify that. The Archon shard half of the Helminth is still very, very useful, 100%, and I'm sure there's a few other bits and pieces of the Helminth that can be very useful as well, but when it comes to the ability swapping part of it, the main selling point back in the day, yeah, I'm not entirely seeing the reason for it myself. Anyway, let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. How do you feel about the Valkyr rework? Do you like her? Do you like her more? Do you like her less? Have you changed your build? Do you have a different build to what I'm doing? Let me know in the comments. Otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed this. If you liked this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Warframe action, I guess, maybe. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.
The armor's spine eyes have been torn out. Excellent work.